I am a patriot. I love our country. I am a strong and intelligent woman of color, and I have dedicated almost my entire adult life to protecting the safety, security, and the freedom of all Americans in this country. It was the attacks on 9/11.
Tulsi Gabbard unleashed a blistering takedown of Joy Behar on The View, leaving the studio in stunned silence as the clash erupted live on air. From the opening second, the tension was thick enough to slice through, and Joy had no idea she was walking into a storm she couldn't outrun. It kicked off when Joy, flashing that familiar smug grin, tossed out one of her recycled jabs, but this time she pushed the line too far. With flimsy barbs and weak accusations, she tried to corner Tulsi, but the attempt collapsed instantly in front of millions. Unshaken and razor-focused, Tulsi locked eyes with Joy and fired back with pinpoint precision, unleashing the line that froze the room, calling her an idiot right there on national television. Gasps tore through the audience, and Joy's face flushed crimson as the power dynamic flipped in a single heartbeat. Tulsi leaned forward with unshakable resolve, making it clear she would not be silenced or pushed aside, not by Joy, and not by anyone else sitting at that table. The other hosts squirmed in their chairs, their unease written all over their faces as the tension soared. Joy scrambled with her cue cards like they were a lifeline, but her trembling hands betrayed her unraveling composure. Tulsi had seized the reins of the confrontation, and there was no denying it. The momentum, the stage, and the power now belonged entirely to her.
Yes, we're getting a little bit far ahead of ourselves, but Franklin Graham finds you refreshing. He doesn't find me refreshing. Richard Spencer, the white nationalist leader, says he could vote for you.
Joy, this is why
you're on
here.
Tucker Carlson at least 10 times. Why don't you go on Chris Wallace's show?
This is why I'm here, because you and other people continue to spread these innuendos that have nothing to do with who I am.
Well, Hillary Clinton started it, and then you shot back at her, boy. You called her the queen of warmongers.
You doubled down, unfortunately, you doubled down on the baseless accusations that she made that strikes at the core of who I am. I'm a soldier. Because of the attacks on 9/11, I enlisted in the military to go after and defeat and destroy the evil that visited us on that day. I've served now for over 16 years, deployed twice to the Middle East during the height of the war, where every single day I saw firsthand the terribly high human cost.
Tulsi gave Joy no space to breathe, her gaze locked and her voice slicing through the air like a blade. "You think you can smear me and I'll just sit here and smile for the cameras?" she shot back, every word landing with the force of a direct hit. Then came the gut punch that rattled the studio. "I've faced enemies overseas who were more honest than this." Gasps thundered across the audience as whispers rippled through the crowd, while Joy forced out a nervous laugh, her shifting eyes betraying the panic creeping in. The co-hosts glanced uneasily at one another, frozen between stepping in or letting the storm rage unchecked. Even the crew stood paralyzed, their fingers hovering as if afraid to cut the broadcast. But Tulsi pressed forward with chilling calm, her voice deliberate and steady, each line sharper than the last. "You've made a career out of tearing down anyone who dares to disagree with you," she declared, pointing squarely at Joy with unrelenting precision. "But you chose the wrong person today." Gasps and sudden applause erupted, fueling the firestorm blazing across the studio. Joy opened her mouth to fight back, but Tulsi cut her off like lightning. "No, you've had your turn. Now it's time you listened." The authority in her tone froze Joy in her chair, her trademark confidence evaporating before millions of viewers. Tulsi's eyes narrowed with icy intensity as she struck again. "You call yourself a truth-teller, but what you've done today is nothing more than spreading lies and personal attacks." The impact of her words hung heavy, searing into the moment. The air grew suffocating as the audience realized they weren't just watching another debate. This was history unfolding live. Tulsi stood unshaken, battle-hardened, even when Whoopi tried to twist the narrative by framing her as defensive. But that effort collapsed instantly, shattering in front of everyone and leaving Joy even more exposed than before.
So, Before I ask her the first question, what's happening with the telescope and the stuff?
Oh,
in
gosh.
Hawaii?
The challenge is ongoing. The challenge is ongoing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
What is that?
So
Just explain.
they decided, it was decided that they were going to go on sacred land.
Oh, yeah. I remember this.
And put up a telescope and do all this stuff. And the Hawaiians said, no, you're not going to do that. So it's been a fight. Tulsi's been at the forefront. Yeah. And I try to bring it up, you know,
I remember.
when I can, because it's, I think sacred land is sacred land.
Yeah.
You can't, you know,
Yeah,
you can't
anywhere.
mess with it. So I have to ask you this
I'm glad you
instead.
did.
So we were just talking about EU Ambassador Sondland changing his testimony yesterday, that he had to be refreshed about quid pro quo. And you've been skeptical more than a lot of the Democrats about the impeachment inquiry. Were you surprised by what he did yesterday?
Well, look, the facts are important, and we'll get to that. I want to start with something that I think is also important about facts.
Defensive. Tulsi snapped back without the slightest pause, her words slicing through the tension like a razor. No, I'm not defensive. I'm correcting you because you're wrong, and you know it. The audience erupted into scattered applause, with some even jumping to their feet in support. Joy's cheeks flushed a deeper shade of red, but she forced a stiff smile, pretending nothing was unraveling, while her co-hosts squirmed in their seats, nervously eyeing the cameras. Not one of them dared to intervene. The standoff had captured every eye in the room. Tulsi leaned back slightly, composed but unyielding, her voice sharp enough to pierce steel. You invited me here to talk, but all you've done is insult me. Tell me, is that your idea of journalism? Her sarcasm dripped heavy, sparking bursts of laughter from the crowd. Joy, rattled and stumbling, flipped through her notes desperately, searching for an escape. But Tulsi refused to release her grip on the spotlight. This isn't just about disagreement, Tulsi pressed on, her tone firm and unwavering. This is about you deliberately spreading misinformation to millions of people watching at home. The words hit with the weight of a thunderclap, leaving the air heavy with silence. Joy tried to stammer out a reply, her voice trembling. Well, that's just my opinion. But Tulsi cut her off instantly, sharp and merciless. No, Joy, that's not opinion, that's a lie, and there's a very clear difference. The crowd gasped before bursting into applause, their cheers drowning out Joy's faltering defense. For the first time, Joy appeared truly cornered, her trademark bravado stripped away and replaced by raw unease. In that electrifying moment, Tulsi had taken complete control, dismantling Joy's argument live in front of an audience that would never forget what they had just seen.
That's why I ran for Congress.
We actually have the clip of Hillary Clinton, just to put this in context
put it
of
in
what we're
context.
talking about. Let's take a look at that.
I'm not making any predictions, but I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic primary and are grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians. They have a bunch of, sites and bots and other ways of supporting her so far. And that's assuming Jill Stein will give it up, which she might not, because she's also a Russian asset.
So
Really? I mean, this is outrageous. This is outrageous and offensive on so many levels. I've served as a member of Congress now for almost 7 years, receiving high-level national security and intelligence briefings, serving on the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Armed Services Committee, the Homeland Security Committee, working to ensure the safety and security of the people of this country. This is why I'm running for president, to continue that commitment of service.
So are you surprised, though, that when people see bots and things and all the things that we've sort of been seeing heading your way, that people have these questions? Because she's not the only one. Hillary, I don't think, is the only one. So what she's saying is she feels they are grooming you. You're saying nobody's grooming me. I'm doing what I'm doing because I'm a soldier and a patriot.
It's offensive to me as a soldier, as an American, as a member of Congress, as a veteran, and frankly, as a woman, to be so demeaned in
But you
such
called
a way.
her the personification of rock.
So demeaned
She's a woman
in such
too.
a way. Well, I'm pointing to the fact that she has continued this legacy of being the world's police around the world, that has waged wars costing the lives of thousands of my brothers and sisters in uniform. I'm speaking out against that and
What's
to
your evidence
change
to that?
to change.
Well, can I?
Are you
can I-
serious?
Let's hear it.
Are you serious?
Let's hear it.
I served in the war
Not
in
you,
Iraq.
her. You're saying that she's-
exactly.
she's a
I
warmonger.
served
How do
in
you
the
come
war
up with
in
that?
Iraq
Yeah.
that she championed. She championed a regime change war
Did you not
in
believe
Libya.
in that war?
I believe the lies that were told to us.
Well, so did she.
Look, it is indisputable. It is indisputable.
Joy's fingers clutched her cue cards so tightly it looked like she might tear them apart, gripping them as though they could salvage her crumbling control. She tried to force composure with a glance at the cameras, but Tulsi's gaze never budged, unyielding, relentless, and fierce. "You've built your career on tearing down people like me," Tulsi declared, her tone calm but ringing with power. "But here's the truth, Joy. You can't bully someone who's fought real battles." The audience exploded into thunderous applause, their energy shifting instantly to Tulsi's side. Joy attempted a smirk, but it shattered under Tulsi's piercing stare. "I'm just asking questions," Joy muttered weakly, but Tulsi struck without hesitation. "No, you're making baseless accusations, and you're doing it because you can't win with facts." Each word landed like a precise strike, electrifying the studio. "You called me an idiot," Tulsi continued, leaning forward just enough to make Joy recoil. "And yet here you sit, dismissing my service, my record, and my experience, simply because it doesn't fit your agenda." Joy let out a brittle laugh, her eyes darting desperately toward her co-hosts for backup. But none dared to step into the firestorm Tulsi had unleashed. "I've served my country. I've walked through war zones. I've seen devastation with my own eyes," Tulsi pressed on, her voice unshakable. "And I will not be diminished by someone who has never lived a single day of that reality." The audience roared, some even rising to their feet, their cheers drowning out the tension. Joy's face twisted with frustration and disbelief, realizing she was trapped in a clash she couldn't win. One co-host awkwardly attempted to steer the show back to lighter ground, but Tulsi cut in before the momentum slipped away, keeping the reins of control firmly in her hands.
To say anything other than the fact that
can I say
let me just close this out, that Hillary Clinton throughout her career has led with a foreign policy of interventionism and being the world's police, going and toppling dictators in other countries that has caused such destruction and loss of life. I'm against that. I'm running for president to change that. Rather than actually debate me on the issues, she and others are resorting to these smear tactic campaigns, seeking to undermine me, smear my character, and sending a message to anyone who dissents: toe the line, or you too will be smeared.
"We're not moving on until this is clear," Tulsi declared, her tone steady and commanding, locking the entire studio in suspense. "You don't get to spread lies and then hide behind a smile." Joy, rattled and shaky, tried to cut in with a weak, "Well, Tulsi, maybe if you—" But Tulsi struck back instantly. "No, Joy, stop. You've had your turn. Now you're going to listen." Her words landed like an order, freezing the room in place as the audience exploded in cheers and gasps. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate, unsure whether to cut to commercial or keep rolling as the storm raged live. Tulsi pressed forward, her voice sharp but calm, every syllable piercing through the noise. "You accuse me without evidence, then pretend you're simply asking questions. That isn't journalism, that's manipulation." Gasps echoed, quickly followed by thunderous applause that rattled the walls of the studio. Joy's shoulders sagged, her usual bravado fading, as Tulsi leaned in with pinpoint precision, cutting away any defense she tried to muster. "Here's the reality," Tulsi fired, her voice unwavering. "You call me names, you question my integrity, but the truth is, you're threatened by me, threatened by someone who refuses to play by your script." Joy's silence screamed louder than any excuse, her face locked in frustration while the crowd roared louder than ever. And then came the knockout blow, the line destined to dominate headlines for days. "So here's my advice, Joy. If you don't want to be called out, then stop acting like an idiot on national television." The crowd erupted into a frenzy of cheers mixed with gasps. As Joy's jaw dropped and her expression snapped from shock to rage, she opened her mouth as if to fire back, then slammed it shut, darting desperate glances toward the producers for rescue that never arrived. Tulsi leaned back in her chair, calm, collected, and utterly in control, while Joy sat cornered, humiliated, and without a single comeback in sight.
I do want to ask you something else. Kamala Harris said recently that her race and gender are, quote, the elephant in the room, and that many still question if America is ready for a woman, and specifically a woman of color, to be president. And you're also a woman of color.
Yeah.
Is that, you feel, been a problem for you? Do you agree with her?
No, I think the American people are ready for a president that will put people ahead of politics, put people ahead of profits.
Then why is she saying that, you think?
You have to ask Kamala that. I can't speak to why she's saying that. But what I've seen in our travels across New Hampshire, we just came from New Hampshire yesterday, across the early states, we have some New Hampshire people here, is we are building a coalition to bring about the systemic change we need to see to take our government back from the rich and powerful who control it and make it so our government is truly of, by, and for the people.
You can twist this however you want, Tulsi declared, her voice booming through the tense studio. But everyone watching knows exactly what just happened here today. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause, shaking the set and making it clear the audience had chosen their side. Tulsi hadn't merely defended herself, she had flipped the entire showdown upside down, leaving Joy visibly shaken and stripped of her usual confidence. Producers finally cut to commercial, but the damage was done, and there was no undoing it. Social media lit up instantly, clips spreading like wildfire across every platform, ensuring this clash would live online forever. When the cameras returned, Joy tried to mask her humiliation with a forced calm, but her quieter, hesitant tone betrayed her rattled state. Tulsi, meanwhile, sat poised, collected, and untouchable, the undeniable victor of the confrontation. This was raw, unfiltered television at its most explosive, the kind that seizes an audience and refuses to let go. Joy had tried to put Tulsi on the defensive, but instead ended up dismantled, cornered, and humiliated on her own stage. The tension hung thick, pressing down on the co-hosts, the crew, and most of all Joy, whose shaky smile couldn't hide the cracks spreading through her composure. Tulsi leaned back with the calm confidence of someone who knew she had seized total control. Joy made a frail attempt to steer the discussion toward safer waters, but the audience wasn't buying it. They were still buzzing, whispering, and reacting to Tulsi's fearless takedown. One co-host tried to force a joke to lighten the mood, but the air was still electric, as Tulsi's piercing gaze locked firmly on Joy, keeping the pressure suffocating. Finally, Joy offered a shaky line, mumbling, "I think we just had a misunderstanding." But Tulsi shut it down instantly. "No, Joy," she said firmly, her tone echoing with authority. "We had a very clear understanding. You came at me with false accusations, and I responded with the truth." The audience roared in response, clapping and cheering, refusing to let Joy sweep the moment under the rug. Joy forced a stiff smile, clinging desperately to scraps of dignity. But Tulsi wasn't finished. Leaning forward, steady and unshaken, she delivered her final blow. "You can call me whatever names you want, Joy, but the next time you try to discredit someone, make sure you have the facts first, because not everyone will sit here and take it." The words crashed down like a hammer, silencing the room in stunned awe. Joy opened her mouth, then closed it quickly, realizing the fight was over. Defeat was etched across her face. Tulsi had won, and there wasn't a soul watching who didn't know it.
Because recently on your show here...
I was just going to get to that.
Good. Helping you out.
You want me to ask you the question?
No, look, some of you
Ask me the
have
question.
accused me of being a traitor to my country, a Russian asset, a Trojan horse, or a
we haven't accused you.
useful idiot, I think was the
Well,
term that you
useful.
used. Which basically means that I'm naive or lack
That's a
intelligence
Russian
to
term.
know what's going
They
on.
use that.
I want to let your viewers know exactly who I am.
All right.
Set the record straight. I am a patriot. I love our country. I am a strong and intelligent woman of color, and I have dedicated almost my entire adult life to protecting the safety, security, and the freedom of all Americans in this country. It was the attacks on 9/11.
By the time Tulsi walked off that set, social media had already exploded into chaos. Clips of her calling Joy an idiot and demanding accountability spread like wildfire, with hashtags rocketing up the charts before the broadcast had even wrapped. Political commentators rushed to weigh in, fans celebrated Tulsi's fearless takedown, and critics of The View hailed it as one of the most satisfying smackdowns in daytime television history. Joy, on the other hand, chose silence. She disappeared from the conversation for the rest of the day, avoiding the frenzy altogether. But that silence backfired, only pouring gasoline on the fire and making the viral clips spread even faster. Tulsi embraced the storm, releasing a short statement later that night, thanking supporters and reminding them that standing up for the truth isn't always comfortable, but it's always worth it. Her words hit like lightning, collecting thousands of shares and comments, cementing her image as a fearless voice unafraid of hostile stages. In the end, Tulsi didn't just walk away from The View. She conquered it, controlled it, and left a scar neither Joy Behar nor the show itself could erase anytime soon. This wasn't just another TV clash. It became a national moment that proved the truth can cut through even the most carefully staged platforms, commanding the spotlight in unforgettable fashion. For Joy, the sting of that defeat would linger like a shadow every time she took her seat at that table, because one guest had dared to call her out, without fear, without apology, and without backing down. That guest was Tulsi Gabbard, who walked off that stage not just as a visitor, but as the undisputed victor of a battle the entire nation had witnessed live.